Juan Mendez Scott's Mystery Magazine.
Chapter 10. Truly Free. The rain pounded against the roof of the car in heavy, relentless sheets, the kind of downpour that made it feel like the world was being washed away. I had half expected the park to be flooded, the swollen Potomac River swallowing up the land, but Gary and I met there anyway. It was almost fitting, the storm adding a strange sense of intimacy to our meeting. Gary had arrived first, parked in his sleek black 2018 Jaguar XJ, his headlights cutting through the misty gray. I pulled up beside him in a loaner Mercedes-Benz SUV, identical to Camille's, same make, model, and color. It was all part of the plan. After leaving Mercedes-Benz Arlington, I had made a stop at the Rivertown 12 Theater in Oxon Hill, purchasing a ticket for Deadpool 2 that I had no intention of watching. It was just an alibi, a small detail that would later prove useful. As I pulled into the park, the rain picked up even more, the drops so large and thick they splattered against the windshield like small pebbles. For a moment, Gary didn't recognize the vehicle next to him, his eyes squinting through the rain-streaked glass. But when I stepped out, he realized it was me, and the confusion cleared from his face. He remembered that I had mentioned putting my car in the shop for maintenance. I brought along a 6-pack of Blue Moon beer, with one special bottle set aside just for Gary, and a few exotic berry wine coolers for myself. We huddled in the warmth of his car, the rain creating a rhythmic backdrop as it hammered down on the roof, while the windows fogged up from our breath and the lingering heat of our bodies. Gary popped open a beer, and I twisted off the cap of a wine cooler. We quickly got tipsy, the alcohol warming our insides as we reminisced about old times. How we first met at the Proud Mary restaurant down by the Fort Washington Marina. How we'd laughed and flirted our way through those early days, and how we'd often found ourselves back at Fort Washington Park, making out like teenagers in the secluded spot near the Battery Emery. The park had always been our place, tucked away at the back end, where the crumbling ruins of the old battery stood like a relic from another time. With the rain pouring down, the stone structures looked as if they were melting into the earth, the once proud walls now little more than soggy shadows. Inside the car, it was a different world. We kissed, our hands roaming over each other, driven by a mix of nostalgia and lust. The windows fogged up quickly, turning the outside world into a blurred swirl of gray. Gary's glasses fogged up too, and with a laugh, he took them off and tossed them into the back seat, his eyes bright with excitement. Breathless, both of us sweating from the heat and the exertion, Gary leaned back against the seat, a wide grin on his face. "It's been a long time since we fooled around like this," he said, his voice filled with a kind of wonder. "That was nice." "We need to go home and take this to the bed," I murmured, running my hand over his bare chest, feeling the dampness of his skin under my fingers. "All day long," he agreed, leaning in to kiss me again, his hands finding my breasts, squeezing them as if he couldn't get enough. Under the covers, in the rain. I smiled at him, a smile he couldn't see for what it really was. "Look, I got you in here sweating. Looks like you need a drink, a nice cold beer." "Oh yes," he said, his eyes lighting up at the prospect. "I'm about ready for another beer, baby." I reached into the back seat, grabbing the small cooler where I had carefully stored the drinks. My fingers brushed against the highlighted bottle, the one laced with the powdered remains of Camille's high blood pressure pills. I retrieved it, opening it with a practiced ease, and handed it to Gary, the cold glass slick in my hand. "I picked up the beer and wine coolers on the way here to the park," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Yeah, I had a couple of drinks on the flight home," he said, his tone still warm and playful. "A couple of hits, huh?" I teased, smiling as he brought the bottle to his lips. "Yeah, a few drinks," he said, taking a long, deep swig. The beer slid down his throat, cold and smooth, and I watched as he sighed with satisfaction. This is nice and cold. We gotta do this more often. And we will, I said, pulling out another wine cooler for myself. From here on out, just come here to the park and spend time together. Gary nodded, sipping more of the beer, his hazel eyes locked onto mine, so full of love it was almost painful to see. I love you so much, Genevieve. I remember the first time I saw you, I couldn't stop staring at you. We kissed again, but this time I gave him the kiss of death. My lips pressed against his as he continued to drink, unaware of the poison slowly seeping into his system, unaware that the last memory he would have of me was one of tender affection. I pulled back, watching as he downed the rest of the beer, his smile lingering even as his body began to betray him. The rain continued to fall outside, a heavy, ceaseless drumming that matched the rhythm of my heart as I waited, knowing that soon Gary's heart would stop altogether. The one thing I loved you for, the one thing that I always knew I would love you for is that you would take care of me for the rest of my life, I said, my voice soft yet laced with hidden malice. Gary's face lit up with that earnest, boyish smile that had once made me fall for him, or at least made me believe I had. And I will. I am. That's a promise, Ginny. I will never, ever, ever make you feel neglected again. Ever. I locked eyes with him, a dark smile playing on my lips. You better not. How can we make these babies tonight if you neglect me? Gary chuckled, a nervous, childlike snicker that almost made me pity him. Babies? What are we having, twins? The way you were going a few minutes ago, you better be able to pump twins in me, I teased, leaning closer, watching his eyes darken with lust. He glared at me, his expression turning hungry, like he was ready to tear my clothes off and ravish me right there in the back seat of the car. Oh, I'm going to be pumping twins in you all right, you can bet that, he said, his voice thick with desire. But then, the inevitable began to set in. I saw the change in him almost immediately. Gary started sweating, a cold sheen that made his face glisten under the dim light filtering through the rain-soaked windows. He cracked the window to get some air, his breath coming faster, more ragged. I smiled at him, a wicked, knowing smile that he was too far gone to fully register. Why did you crack the window when you've got the air conditioner on? Gary was slipping, his mind fogging over as the overdose of blood pressure pills began to take full effect. He blinked, trying to focus, but the confusion was evident in his eyes. Oh, that's right, he mumbled, turning the air conditioning up to full blast. My heart is racing. Maybe I need to get out and take a walk before we go back to the house. In all this rain? Baby, you might as well chill. We're about to go back to the house anyway, I said, reaching over to rub him between the legs, trying to distract him from the panic setting in. Get back to the house, make a baby. Gary's hands trembled as he placed the beer in the cup holder, fumbling with his zipper as he tried to pull himself together. But the fear was rising, and he was starting to lose it. Something's not right, he gasped, his voice barely more than a whisper. I smiled wider, glancing around the park through the fogged-up windows. No one was in sight. The storm had driven everyone away, leaving us alone in our private little corner of hell. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the thrill of knowing I was moments away from freedom. I can't wait to get you home, I said, my voice dripping with false concern. Gary struggled to sit up, his body rigid with panic as he tried to catch his breath. He gasped like a man suffocating underwater, his eyes wide with terror. What is going on? I'm having a hard time breathing. I can't breathe. What kind of beer is this? He was pleading now, looking at me with desperate, dying eyes, searching for some form of help, some sign that everything would be okay. But all I did was watch, detached, as the life drained out of him. Ginny, call 911. Ginny! His voice was barely a rasp, his body folding in on itself as he clutched at his chest, his face turning a sickly shade of blue. I shook my head slowly, my eyes cold and unfeeling. Just sit back and relax, Gary. Let it come to you. He slumped forward, his body collapsing as he wheezed, fighting for the last breath he would ever take. His eyes remained open, staring blankly at the steering wheel as his heart finally gave out, leaving him dead in his brand-new Jag, the life snuffed out of him in a matter of moments. Now it was time for the real work to begin.
On the next episode of Juan Mendez Scott's Mystery Magazine, Chapter 10, Truly Free.